Well, hello, hello, hello. This is Adrienne Berg, and this is the Ageless Traveler. And I am so happy today to bring to you, I would say, a kindred spirit. Her name is Sucheta Rawal, and she is not only a travel writer, not only a travel speaker, but she's created her own nonprofit organization to really do a lot of good in this world. She's also been to well over 100 countries, and she's very, very well known in the industry for really making an impact on inclusiveness. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Adrienne.
Well, this is lovely. Now, let's start really from the beginning. One of the things that you've done, and it's an interesting approach, it's kind of a kindred approach to the issues of aging and travel, personal travel, is taking a look at inclusiveness. Tell me what you mean by inclusiveness and how you want to make an impact on the industry with regard to that.
So I was born and brought up in India, and I never traveled outside of the country till my first trip, which was to come to the United States during the 97 Olympics.
Uh-huh.
And that was my first introduction to coming abroad, to traveling. And when I was here, I just felt like, wow, I was in this beautiful, diverse world. If you've been to any big city in the United States, I came to Atlanta. There are people from all different nationalities, speaking different languages, and having all these different restaurants. So my thing is food, and I ate my way around the world right here in the city. And I felt like I wanted to know more about these people who are cooking it. How do they eat these dishes in their homes? Why do they make some things the way they do? So my diversity lens came from the food culture, which I think a lot of people feel affinity to food before they even start looking at different cultures. And that's how my love for looking at diversity and travel was born.
Well, I have to put in a plug for the great state of New York in terms of that. Now, we're talking about Atlanta, Georgia. I happen to love it. I've been there many times, and I also enjoy going to theater there. They have some great theater, you guys.
Mhm.
But if you go on the subway in Queens, I'm not kidding, subway, you can get off at every single stop in Queens, New York, a borough of New York City. And each stop is a different ethnic neighborhood and
Yes.
different ethnic restaurants. So
Yeah.
I'm going to say you're right, eating yourself around the world. Now, you also have a 501c3 that
Yes.
deals exactly with that. We're going to put that on our show notes. Everybody will be able to donate if they would like. But tell us about that organization. It's just so exciting that you've done that.
Thank you. So I started Go Eat Give in 2011. And the reason because a lot of my readers were asking me that I'm having all these unique experiences when I travel, where I go into people's homes and try their food, when I'm volunteering in the community, and I'm going to locations that are not often listed in the tour in the books
Yes.
for travelers to go to. And so my readers were saying, well, you're having these neat experiences that I cannot find online. Could you help us plan a trip? So I started Go Eat Give. Initially was just meant to be a data share of where I was going, what I was doing, other organizations that they could also connect with while they're traveling to these places. But then I started realizing that most Americans cannot afford to take off for a long time. We get 2 weeks vacation a
Yes.
year.
We're the
Uh,
worst. We have very, very short vacations.
right.
We
And and
retire.
and
Really.
and we want to maximize it. So we may not want to spend our entire 2 weeks volunteering, or if you're a student, you may take a gap year. But if you're an adult, you want to stay in a nice hotel. You don't really want to rough it out. So I started organizing volunteer vacations where adults, and a lot of them were mature adults, who wanted to have a nice room, but then also have that community interaction where they may be helping out for part of the day, but then also going to somebody's home for a dinner at night and having a conversation with them. So that was the initial premise of Go Eat Give. But then we also started hosting events here where people felt like they went to a country for just an evening. And these were, we called it destination dinners,
Right.
We would host it at a restaurant, which was normally immigrant
Some
or
sort of an
ethnic
ethnic based,
owned.
yeah, right.
Right. And then you can try all the different dishes from the restaurant. We would have the whole place just for our event, and we'll bring in speakers and artists who would talk about where to go when you would visit the country. But we also talked about a lot of important issues that people don't really get to hear in the mainstream media. So, for example, we had this American lady who was working in Kabul as an engineer, and we had her come and speak to the guests about what it was
What it's like to
like
be there.
being a female and working in Afghanistan, and people were able to get a different opinion of what they see in the news. It's all one aspect of the country, but then there are other aspects. And then we had performers who were women, dressed in traditional Afghan clothing, and they were doing these beautiful dances. And people were, well, I didn't think that women were allowed to dance in Afghanistan. And when they tried the food, they had a little bit of an opening to their minds. So the idea with Goikyo, which has been around for, gosh, 14 years now, it's been to change the mindset of people a little bit at a time, and starting with food, because who doesn't want to eat?
Yes. Well, so I always take this little bit of a break to tell you new things. One of the places that I know Sucheta has been and I have been is Cambodia. And that's a place that is really a wonderful people, tough people with a terrific sense of the future. And there you can always go to someone's home. You can always
Hmm.
go to someone's home and eat the food, and it changes your mind completely about Southeast Asia. So that's a terrific thing to know. I also want to tell you, Susheta, that in terms of aging and inclusiveness in aging, it also is a little by little proposition. And one of the great things is that we can show people what it's like to be over 60, 70, and 80. So my
Mhm.
people are particularly culture vultures. They will love to go on your destination dinners and the trips that you put together, and we'll have all that information. And finally, on voluntourism, and I'm looking at you guys, we do have the Ageless Ambassador program where you can volunteer. And I'm going to be coordinating this with Sucheta right on the spot. I didn't even know she was doing it. That's why we do these interviews, because we can really make a relationship. I promise everybody. Where should we eat? I am not a foodie. I have to tell you that I don't eat meat. I have not eaten meat for many, many decades. And probably coming from India, this is not a big deal to you. But here in the US, for someone who doesn't do that, it's not so easy. And I
Mhm.
don't even eat certain fishes.
Mhm.
So when I go to a restaurant, it's either carb heaven, which I which I don't want, or I have a salad. So I'm not your best customer when it comes to this, but I still like to see it, know it, smell it. So where should we go? What's your very favorite cuisine?
Well, I have to say, if you're a vegetarian or vegan, India is your best bet,
Yeah.
because you're looking at a country of 1 billion people and about 50% of them are vegetarian. So you will have absolutely no problem there. And you wouldn't even need to eat a lot of carbs or fried foods or salad. I grew up that way. I only ate meat maybe once a week. And 90% of our meals were vegetarian. It didn't have to have a meat dish on it. So when I came to United States and I started seeing that people are eating meat 3 times a day, I was like, what? Chicken sandwich for breakfast?
Right. What do you do?
So,
Sausage. Sausage first thing in the morning, right.
right, right. So that does not suit my body. I still not able to eat that way. But I think in India, you will have no problem if you were to go there. But there are other places in the world where I have taken travelers who have dietary restrictions or just choose not to eat meat, which I'm also kind of like you there. I think Indonesia has been one of the best countries, especially Bali. It's mainly Hindu-based
Yes.
cuisine, so very vegetarian. Even in the Middle East, like Turkey, Israel, Morocco, I've had absolutely no problem eating actually a lot of veggies. I've had so many options. And I feel like whenever you go to a restaurant, if you make a face-to-face interaction with the chef or the owner and just tell them, where you're from, like they see my face and they're like, oh, you're from India, you probably want vegetarian food. And they bring me a platter of all their best vegetarian dishes without even having me order anything. So if you just introduce yourself, talk to them, don't even look at the menu, just go and tell them your dietary needs. And more than likely, people are going to accommodate you, if not just showcase the best of the cuisine they have to offer.
So I'll tell you, I was in a Michelin restaurant in Italy, and the chef really struggled. He brought me three different dishes, and finally the fourth one was exactly right. So you really do have to persevere. Now I'm going to say something to you guys. I need low salt. My husband is diabetic, and we have a real campaign about particularly cruise ships
Hmm.
putting on the menu at least one low salt and one low sugar menu, and they don't. You can get it by asking for it the day before from the cruise food manager. So you can get it, but it does kind of call you out. And yet they'll have a vegan dish, but they won't have a low salt or low sugar dish. So that's
Hmm.
my big campaign, folks, and hopefully you will also complain because you're all cruisers. Now, I still didn't get the answer. What's your favorite? Because maybe it's Katz's delicatessen. I don't know. What's your favorite food?
My favorite food, I love Italian, and I feel like I was maybe Italian in past life because the first thing I learned to cook was Italian. I loved gelato so much when I was traveling in Italy. I ate it 3 times a day, and then I could not find it here when I came home. So I went to the Gelato and Pastry Institute in New York and got a certification in gelato making so I could make it at home for myself and my family and have that real flavor of gelato made the old-fashioned way, where you would beat the yolks and make it from scratch and not add any additives or stabilizers. So whenever I get gelato, I have to taste it to see if it's the real thing.
Well, that sounds fabulous. I will tell you that Corfu, because I've been there a few times, and every time I go to a particular gelato place. It's
Hmm.
right next to a biscotti place, but it's in Corfu, and it's just delicious. So bear that in mind. For me, I'm really basically a pescatarian, taking a lot of the kinds of fish and not eating it. So everybody accuses me of being riddled with mercury. So for me, fresh fish. And I have to say that a trip down the Bosporus
Hmm.
from Istanbul to
Yeah.
the villages where they have the fresh fish that they give you was so important to me that my husband and I, on our 52nd anniversary, yeah, we've been married more than 52 years, that was our trip. And the fish is just out of this world. But for the vegetarian stuff, I like Uzbekistan. Now, not everybody can get on the
Oh.
Silk Road, but I have to say that going on the Silk Road tours, we were there for
Hmm.
about 3 weeks with the
Hmm.
ministry. It was amazing for vegetarian dishes, and
Hmm.
there is that uh, Russian salad, but also Indian, also
Hmm.
Mongolian, I mean
Yeah.
Chinese. It's all in one place because of where they're located. And
Yeah.
we got about 150 miles away from Afghanistan. I would have loved to go to your Afghanistan world. So I'm going to leave this with a new series, a new book series for your cat. Listen to this one. We did a video for the UN on older people, and I mean older people, 70s, 80s, 90s, keeping up the traditions, like you talked about Afghanistan and dancing, keeping the cultural traditions alive. And it was pretty sensational. It was much older people in incredible costumes, musicians, some of them were musicians, dancers, and so on. And it gave, like you said, a whole new look at a culture, like your
Hmm.
cat goes to different cultures for understanding. Well, this gave a whole new look at older people and their contribution to travel. So
Hmm.
maybe your cat could go could go to one of those dance which we had all over the world. I'll send it to you.
Mhm.
Not only would they be illuminating the culture of certain very interesting areas of the world, all over the world, but also the fact that older adults are part of that.
Yeah,
We're not sitting there in the closet. We are, without us, those cultures and traditions would not be known from
absolutely.
generation to generation. So I
Yeah.
think that that's an important bridge for to keep tourism interesting because who wants to go to another parking lot? You know, you go on a 14, 15 hour plane ride to New Zealand. You don't want to see a parking lot. You want to see something that's actually exotic and new. So
Hmm.
thank you for this. And you're going to have a wonderful time in the great retirement haven of Asheville. I know they've had some hard time, but it's one of the great retirement havens in the United States
Mhm.
and New York. But I have to tell you, I'm not only from New York, I'm also from California. So
Hmm.
it's sort of like living on two planets. That is the case. I'll end with this. Your next book, are you coming up with another children's book? Or what was your latest children's book so we all know
So
what's
I've done 5 books so far. They are Greenland, Israel, Indonesia, Japan, and Brazil. I'm taking a pause right now and just focusing on the marketing,
right?
but I have 10 more books in my head.
I'm sure. I'm sure. You know, everybody asks me what was your favorite country, and I always say it's like men, the last one that that I visited. But do you have a favorite if you could go back over and over again? Is it would there be one particularly for the culinary adventures?
For culinary adventures, I love going back to Italy and Israel.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's just such a rich farm to table is not a new concept, right? They've been doing that for
Yeah,
hundreds of years and really well. And I remember sitting in Tuscany and ordering, looking at the menu, and they said, "Well, we don't eat fish here because it's the sea is 100 miles away." And
right.
imagine that doing that here in Atlanta, like, oh, we don't have serve fish on any restaurant menu,
Fish.
right? So I love going back to Italy for the food and Israel for the melting pot of different cultures and how they have retained their recipes over time. And there would be this one place who are just doing one dish and they'll be doing that over and over again, and they perfected it. They don't want to expand. There's one restaurant that just does hummus, one does burekas, one does babkas, and that's it. And I love that. I love that you can taste a piece of history while walking through it.
Yes. So we thank you so much. I mean, even that little inspirational quote there, tasting a piece of history. Beautifully said. So thank you so much. And for everybody else, please do go on our YouTube and subscribe, like us on Apple and Spotify. We have Travel Tuesdays. We have a newsletter every single Tuesday. People have found it very interesting adjunct to what we talk about on the air. And of course, very important, please join our free Facebook salon. We call it a salon because you all share together. You'll find all of this information, including Sucheta, on agelesstraveler.com and never stop traveling.